Can you see my nice slide? Genevieve, you see it? My Smith
Yes,
and
of
Geneva
course.
slide? Okay, good. So hi, everybody. I just want to welcome everybody to our Geneva information session. I don't know if any of you were at the one we did during the study abroad fair. If you were, this will be similar. But I'm going to just do a short presentation with slides. And Genevieve Piron, who's actually in Switzerland right now and is our director on site, will also participate in explaining things, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. So let me start by saying that, starting out by saying that I'm totally biased. I'm the faculty liaison, I'm professor of government, but I'm also the faculty liaison for the Geneva program. And I'm totally biased. I think this is, I'm not going to say our best program, but easily, among our best programs. The students that go on it, they love the program. They love being in Geneva. The opportunities are wonderful. We have different tracks, as you'll see in a minute, but you can take classes in English or French, depending on where you go. It's open to all disciplines, pretty much all disciplines. You take classes at the University of Geneva, which is a large university. We offer classes at the Smith Center, where we hire our own teachers. And we also, many of our students take classes at the world-renowned Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies, where they take courses that focus more on development and international relations. So I'm going to go through all that in a second. If you have questions, I guess we'll just have you, well, you can raise your hands in the participants panel, and I'll monitor that. Lisa, you can monitor that too, if we miss it. So I'm just going to start just by showing you a few photos from Geneva. Some of these are from our students, and some of these are just photos I picked up over the years. And I'm going to ask Genevieve Piron to help me comment on them on certain, in certain instances, because she's a lot closer to it than I am. Okay, let me get here. So I'm just going to show you a few pictures of Geneva. This is the lake and the tall fountain, middle of the lake, Lac Léman or Lac Geneva. This is an aerial picture of the same scene. This is just gorgeous to walk around the lake, and people as brave as Genevieve actually go swimming in this lake. So
I just did that today.
What's the weather like today?
Cold.
Cold, yeah. Okay, this is one of the campuses of the University of Geneva. This is the other side of the same campus. There are actually three main campuses. This is one of them. This is the one of the more modern campuses, where a lot of the social science and economics classes, I think, would be offered. And this is a third campus. These are all fairly close, within walking distance of the Smith Center. This is a stock photo from the Graduate Institute of International Development Studies. They have a fairly new set of buildings and new residences as well, which are in the process of opening. And this is where our students would go to take classes on, international relations or development classes. It's a short tram ride, a short bus ride away from the Smith Center. This is just a scene of the old city in Geneva, an outdoor cafe. This is the old synagogue, which is right across the road from the Smith Center. This is, if you leave the Smith Center, this is what you'll see. And here are some of the residences our students have stayed in over the last several years. They vary a little bit from year to year. We don't use all of these every year. It depends on the number of students and the tracks. But this one's right in the old city across from the cathedral. This one is more modern. The others are more modern. This one's close to the Smith Center. Likewise, this one's a little further away in a more residential neighborhood. Again, we don't use all of these every year, but these are residences our students have stayed in over the years. This is just an old tram on the Smith Center, is actually up the street, a little bit on the left. This is the Reformation Wall in a park very close to the Smith Center. These are kind of life-size chess matches that go on in the same park. As I mentioned previously, I'm always surprised when I come here to see how few women are actually playing chess. It's always older men playing chess here. But anyway, this is just a more modern tram on a nice sort of commercial street. Good food, of course, lots of dairy and fondue. These are these chocolate marmite, which I'm going to ask Genevieve to interject and explain what this is all about. These are chocolate soup pots, but Genevieve will give you a little context.
Yes, this is a a celebration that takes place at the beginning of December every year, and it's a huge national celebration that celebrates the independence of Geneva, because Geneva was a republic for a long, long time. Actually, it joined the Confederation very late in the 19th century, and it was often attacked by neighbors, especially the Savoyards from the nearby dukedom, the French, the Austrian, etc. And they were defeated, so they were attacked during the night on the 12th of December, and the population actually defeated the Savoyards, which are now very near the border. Geneva is, I think, 80% surrounded with France, and so we are really kind of a little nest within the French borders. So they were attacked, and there is a legend that is half true, that an old woman defeated the French by throwing a pot of soup on their head when they were climbing the wall. And so every year there is a big celebration with horses, with fire, with soup, and with these tremendous chocolate pots where we say that so will die the enemies of the Republic. And then we triumphantly break the chocolate pot and eat the little vegetables inside. So come in the fall or for the year.
I'll also add, if you are a runner, there's a race, like a short race through the old city associated with this holiday, where a lot of people are, and for one of the meets, people run in costumes, and it's quite fun to watch or run. Okay, let me move on with the slides. We're going to get into the academics in a sec. This is the train station. I put it here to point out Geneva is very centrally situated. Cheap flights and trains essentially all over Europe. Very easy access under normal circumstances, of course.
And they developed very much the biking now. Mm-hmm. During this COVID crisis, they cut half of the roads to develop the bikes. It's sometimes a little bit like Copenhagen now.
Yeah. So this is, you see that when, on a clear day, you'll see the mountains from Geneva when you're walking near the lake. The flower clock, Swiss and are famous for their watches and clocks. This is the United Nations in Geneva. This is our Smith students, so a couple of years ago, I think. This is our cohort of Smith students in front of the World Trade Organization. All these international organizations and non-governmental organizations, there are dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of them in Geneva. I'll talk about that in a minute when we get to the internships. And these are some of our students, I think, celebrating birthdays at the Smith Center in one of our rooms.
The library. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the library at the Smith Center. There's a little kitchenette there too, and students under normal circumstances hang out there. There's a workroom with there's Wi-Fi obviously, and people just hang out there. It's very centrally situated. Okay, now I'm going to talk a bit about the study options in Geneva. I'll go through this fairly quickly, and if you have questions, we're happy to take them. So we have essentially 3 tracks, and then I'm not going to talk much about the 4th point. I'll mention it again at the very end, but we have track A, our international internship track, University of Geneva Studies, track B, track C, which is focused on the Graduate Institute. And then we have a 5-year BA MA program, which again, I'll mention at the very end, but I'm going to focus on the first 3 mostly today. International internship program, track A. So here you intern with an international organization, or more likely a non-governmental organization, 2 to 3 days per week. Feel free to jump in, Genevieve, if I miss anything or I misspeak. Part of that, you'll take 4 classes, you'll get 16 credits. 1 class is a required humanitarianism class that we offer at the Smith Center, but that's taught by a professor from the Graduate Institute that is who's worked with us for years now. You also will write a long research paper associated, it's called the Practicum International Organizations. It's an independent study project that you work with under the supervision of a doctoral student at the Graduate Institute. And I'll show you some examples of topics in a minute. But these topics are either closely or remotely related to your internships. Some do it very closely and others choose different topics. You would take class at the Smith Center, excuse me. That would be your French class, and then 1 elective. So you've got the humanitarianism seminar for 4 credits, the research paper, the independent project for 4 credits, French for 4 credits, and then one other course for probably 4 credits at the University of Geneva or at the Graduate Institute. So you would get 18 credits, which includes 2 for orientation. What do we need? You can do this either in the fall or the spring. You can do this for 1 semester. You can also combine it with one of the other tracks. And for example, you could do track A in the fall and track B in the spring, if you like. So you can do it in either semester, and you need 1 semester of college level French before you go. I just the other day spoke with the chair of the French department, Don Fulton, and they've made a slight change. So, and in fact, made it easier for you to take French. So you need 1 semester of college French for track A. Students with no background in French ever would take, you would take French 101 in your fall semester. You can take it in your first year or your second year or your third year. If you go to Geneva in the spring of your third year, you could take it then. But if you have any French background, even in high school, they allow you now to bypass French 101 and go straight into French 103, which is offered in the spring. So if you have any high school French and you want to take French next semester, you can now take French 103. This apparently is new development, which they just told me about. So you need 1 semester of French. I'm just going to leave this slide on for a second. These are a couple of years ago, the research papers that students wrote on. Again, some of these were closely related to their internships, others not. Nuclear energy policy, vector-borne diseases. So if you've got an interest, in environmental science, for example, you might develop a topic that's related to that. Again, under the supervision of a mentor who will be a doctoral student at the Graduate Institute. And Geneviève Piron, our director, kind of sets all of this up for you. She also sets up the internships. She organizes the internships, which is a monumental task. This is a small slide, but just give you a sense of a year ago or so. Some of the non-governmental organizations our students interned at. These are not guaranteed from year to year, but if you look at the slide, you'll see there's stuff on the environment, there's stuff on migration, there's stuff on security, there's stuff on children's rights. And the advice we always give students is that if you go to Geneva with an open mind, you're likely to end up with an internship you really like. If you're very sort of narrowly focused on one particular organization, it may or may not work out because there's no guarantee that all these internships can be offered from year to year. But there is a guarantee that if you're in track A, you will get an internship. And here is just page 2. Again, other organizations our students have interned at in recent years. And here's just an example of one of our students sitting here in the back, giving a talk, giving a speech at the United Nations Human Rights Council. Then we have track B, which is essentially integration in the University of Geneva and or the Graduate Institute. Mostly, it's probably both. You take courses at the University of Geneva in English or French, depending on the field and your background. You could take courses at the Graduate Institute. If there's space, you could take that humanitarianism seminar I mentioned before, and you would take French. And there's possibility, it's not required. If you're interested, there's possibility of a part-time internship with a non-governmental organization. And we require more French for track B. If you're going for the full year in track B, you need 2 years of college level French. And if you're going for the spring semester only track B, you would need 1 year of French. We don't offer track B in the fall unless you're going to stay for the full year. There's logistical reasons for that. And then we have a fairly new track, which are students who want to focus in international relations. You take one, the Graduate Institute is a graduate school, and most of the students are master's or doctoral, but they mount a very small number of undergraduate courses for the benefit of exchange programs like us and other American or internet schools abroad that send students to Geneva. So you would take one course, undergraduate course at the Graduate Institute, a second course at the Graduate Institute, which might be undergraduate or might be a regular master's level course. You would take the humanitarianism seminar at the Smith Center or a course at the University of Geneva, depending on your field and depending on your French, and you would take French. And as part of this track C, the Graduate Institute organizes mentoring programs and sessions with international practitioners. These are people who work in the international organizations or the non-governmental organizations, and they couple that with visits to international organizations. It's full 16 to 18 credits like the others. You need, like track A, you need only 1 semester of college French. And then finally, we have a 5-year BA/MA program. You can look at this slide. Essentially, it allows you to go to Geneva for the fall of your senior year, start a master's degree at the Graduate Institute, come back to Smith in the final semester of your senior year, graduate, and then go back to Geneva for 1 year after which you will have obtained a master's degree. Um, this program requires a GPA of 3.5. It requires that you not have any credit deficit by the end of your junior year. It requires that you be on campus at least one semester of your junior year. And there's no language requirement for this, for the BAMA program. I did an information session on it a couple of weeks ago. And if you've missed it and you want a copy of, you want to see the recording, just email me, Howard Gold, hgold@smith.edu, and I'll be happy to send you a link to the recording. There's also the Office of International Study website has links, of course, to all of our programs. And you'll also find information there. So that's the end of my slideshow. That was a quick recap. I'm going to now see if Genevieve wants to add anything before we move to questions.
I just wanted to add that I think the highlights of this program is that it presents a very big variety of options. We don't have the Smith Center is there to give you support in French and introduce you to humanitarianism if you're interested in this. But you can also do chemistry in French in this huge University of Geneva. You can match anthropology at the Graduate Institute and I don't know, Arabic at the University of Geneva. You have a very, very big variety of courses and academic options of very high level that are offered. And I also need to add, especially for track A, that it's in fact very intense and very demanding because, for example, the independent study is really a real academic research where you are asked to follow the rules of the Graduate Institute and introduce you to academic research at this quite high level. So it's extremely, it gives you a lot of opportunities. Students are amazed when they see all what they can do, but it also demands that you are focused and quite ambitious. And then there is also a lot of very interesting, there's a lot of fun because it's a small city which is very open to nature. You can hike, you can travel. There is a lot of culture. So I think it's the density of the offer that distinguishes that program.
I would just add, as you regardless of your track, you'll actually be registered at the University of Geneva, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
And you'll be able to use their facilities, including their participate in extracurricular activities like ski clubs, or when I was there many years ago, I used to play hockey with the University of Geneva Hockey Club. There are lots of extracurricular opportunities, which could be good for your French too, if you want to.
You can even garden on the top of the university now. No, because they offer a lot of sportive and cultural activities with your Swiss ID. You can do a lot of things.
So we're happy to take questions about the program, about about the residences, the residential life, about travel, about logistics. You can raise your hand in the participants panel. That might be the best way to proceed. Got to be some questions.
I have one question.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, so it's like a more specific language question. How well are students who have studied German and then who also will take French set up to communicate with Swiss German? Like, is that a language that we would encounter using, or would we mainly need to sort of focus on honing our French?
I'm going to let Genevieve answer that.
So it depends whether you want to be in Geneva or in Switzerland, because it's not exactly the same. So Geneva, because as I said, is very surrounded with France and has a lot of people coming from France nearby to work, is less German speaking and a little bit less Swiss, I must say, and very often criticized by the Swiss people, especially from the Swiss German part, that they feel like very with the complex of Parisians. But no, German is one of the national languages and you can use it. You will be understood if you speak German, but you may not understand all of the answers if they switch to Swiss German. But no, for sure, it's very good to have it, but it won't be very useful in Geneva. Geneva is really French speaking and English speaking because we have this massive amount of expats working in NGOs and at the UN, and they don't speak German at all. So that's also why there is the French influence plus the international element that makes it quite specific in terms of languages. And the UN languages are Spanish, Chinese, Russian, French, and English. So German is not in the, but there is, for example, the Department of Translation and Interpretation at the university, which has a very high level, obviously because of all these institutions, offers German, and then German is an important part of it. The German department is also very strong in certainly too strong actually, because of the fact that so many people come from Swiss Germany.
Fiona, do you speak German or Swiss German?
I'm in my second year of German at Smith, so yeah.
It would be fun. You can take a tandem. Tandem is a way of, you register on a website at the university and you select students who want to practice another language and you offer your language. And many students, some did even 3 tandems, one in Spanish, one in French.
Oh, awesome.
So that is a very good opportunity.
Thanks.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my guess that's easier to get around in English than it is in German there.
Yeah, no, it is true in Geneva, yes. But if you go to Bern or to Zurich, if you want to practice German, you will find, I mean, we are surrounded with this language. It's just that Geneva is a bit specific in that respect.
Okay, we have a hand raised from, is that Gia?
Hi, yeah, so I kind of just have a general question. So is this program for the 3 tracks, is it like a competitive, like only a limited amount of students get in, or is it if you meet the requirements, you're able to go abroad?
I think we'll let Lisa answer that.
Yeah, that's a good question. The spring semester is definitely competitive because we have a limited number of students that we can accept into the program, and generally we receive twice as many applications as we have spots available. Chances are better of being accepted in the fall or for the academic year because we simply have fewer students applying, and so we have much more capacity to accept students. But spring semester and the last, well, since we started offering semesters for the Geneva program, there has always been a wait list.
Okay. And just one more question. This is more, I know this meeting isn't about that, but for the BA/MA program, how many students are accepted into that program?
So we've sent a small number. We have an agreement with them, with the Graduate Institute, to accept, I think, 3 a year, but they're happy to take more than 3, and we're happy to send more than 3. So we never had that many applicants. We've sent between 1 and 4 every year.
Okay, thank you.
My sense is it's going to pick up a little bit just because of all the disruption and all that. But I've been getting a lot of inquiries. But it's also competitive, obviously, but we haven't yet reached the point where they've said, no, you have too many applicants. And we've sent, 4 students now, once or twice.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
Are we so clear?
I'll just point out, and maybe Lisa or Geneva could add something about this. Our students who go on these programs get a stipend from Smith. And for what previous students have told us, the stipend is actually fairly generous and allows them to live reasonably well and even travel a little bit. This is what students always tell me. But if they manage their money well, they can use the stipend to sort of help subsidize their travel a bit. And students, and Geneva can tell you this better than I can, they take full advantage, many students take full advantage of the opportunity to travel around Switzerland and elsewhere in Europe. Right, I mean, we hear this every year from returning students.
I would add that the first thing that happens is that students are in shock because they discover that a single pizza is like 3 times more expensive than anywhere in the world, and that Switzerland is so expensive. But then they organize themselves with the help of other students, alumni, etc., and go and buy food in France or find ways, and definitely everybody is able to travel. I think there was a question about housing. Actually,
Genevieve, sorry, before we get to that, I think Emily Kish, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, but it was also about housing, so you can answer
Oh,
that one
okay.
first.
All right, great. So yes, the question is, do the students have to find their own housing?
No, we are doing that. And actually, I have good news about housing. There is an incredible building that is being built at the moment by the Graduate Institute on the territory of the ILO, the International Labour Organization, that is in the middle of the International Geneva, northeast to the city. And it will be a very new, superb building with a lot of different kind of rooms and social space for students studying at the Graduate Institute. So there will be a massive amount of international students, interns, and it will be really in the heart of the International Geneva, and we will get rooms there. So I think these old-fashioned, horrible buildings that were on the pictures will soon be forgotten. And I hope that we will have as many rooms as possible in that new residence, because it will be super exciting. It will develop also the International Geneva, which is a kind of a little bit boring place because people come to work and there is few shops and not much fun life. And I think the purpose also is to try to develop this. So, we will keep the housing and the residence in the old town. It's a women-only residence, and it's very nice, and several other options.
We'll say those old horrible buildings that Genevieve was just describing are actually, students quite like living inside.
No, it's true.
They like
Because
the
it's
suites.
nice because you're with other students,
Yeah,
and it's
international
well
students.
organized. It's very well organized. Yes, Emily, you still had a question.
I was just wondering, like, are the housing, or like the people in the housing, is it mostly English speakers, or is there an opportunity to like speak French?
So we are very, we take actually hours trying to match people within the wishes, which is sometimes difficult. But you are sent a housing questionnaire after having been accepted, and we try really to keep students with track B students we tend to put them in flats where there are other students. It doesn't mean that all of them will be French speakers, but there are more opportunities usually there. This being said, it depends so much on where we can find a room. Geneva is a little bit like New York. There is a constant and quite horrible housing shortage. And so our main goal is to allow everybody to be in an international student's residence. And then, I mean, it depends on luck, it depends on what we can find, but not always we can find a place where everybody will speak French. But usually even the students, international students studying in English, learn French and are supposed to speak French.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question in the chat from Claire. Which Geneva programs are most difficult to get accepted to? In short, it's track A in the spring.
Yes.
Because there's a limited number of internships that we can offer. And as Lisa pointed out, there's a limited number of students we can accept for these internships.
And I would say if you are track B, and even if you're track A, and you want to be competitive, it's also good to have a good level of French, because, I mean, you will enjoy your stay more if you will integrate more and understand better what is happening around. So it's good.
Lisa, do you want to add anything to that question?
I would just add also the other thing that we do in the spring as well is to make sure we have a good balance between track A's and track B's. So while it's true what Howard mentioned about track A's being more competitive, again, that's because we tend to get more track A applications than we do for track B. But nevertheless, we try to have as much balance between track A, track B, and then there's generally 2, maybe 3 track C's and stuff. So, and then on top of all that, limited space, so and limited capacity.
Lisa, you should take the next question. Is the application the same for all 3 tracks?
Yep. So once you open an application, it'll ask you what track you're applying for. And as we mentioned, you can select just one track for the semester that you're applying for, or also more and more students actually are opting for the combination, like of a track A plus track B or track A plus track C to be abroad for the full year. You don't have to do track A in the fall. It's just there's more capacity to take track A's in the fall than there are in the spring. Yeah, and Gia, with the, sorry, Howard, I'm going to jump
no,
in,
go
because I
ahead.
was actually going to mention this too. So yes, applying for the joint BA MA is an entirely different process. It's a kind of a branch program rather than a track necessarily. One of the things I was going to add is that another combination that many, or not many, but quite a few students have done is the Smith and Geneva program for the spring semester of their junior year, and then the joint BA MA for the fall semester of their senior year. And it gives you the opportunity to be abroad for the year over 2 different academic years.
And I'll add go ahead, Jenna. Yeah.
It's an interesting option also, because first you can discover the place just before
you
applying for the BMA, and so you already know the place, it's already familiar, and also you don't need then to take French because you have taken it. I mean, you were already very adapted, and I think it's very fruitful. People who did that were very they were very, very happy about, like, they had the impression to have invested during the spring semester to adapt and then get paid off by being able to come and know everything in advance. And I think it's a very good option.
So let me be clear. So what we said, that a number of our students have so they've done a semester in Geneva, usually in the spring of their junior year, and then they've gone back to Geneva in the fall of their senior year to start the BAMA program. The other thing I want to point out, which more and more students we find are doing, are combining the government department picker program in the fall, which is a internship in Washington, D.C. program, and then going to Geneva for the spring for track A or B. So that's another combination we're seeing more and more of. Give you real internship experience for a full year.
This is excellent.
In 2 different settings, yeah. Really
this is
excellent.
really excellent because it gives you a very deep look into inner politics and then international politics, and you compare. And I also find it extremely fruitful when students come back and, I mean, come to Geneva in the spring after the Pickers program. I can say that they also get more payoff, I think, because they have already had an internship and other research, very different. And yeah, it's very, very good.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. Gia, Lisa, you should take this one. How does financial aid differ between the tracks and the BAMA?
Yeah, so there is no difference. So Smith has what we call a homeschool fee policy, in which the students pay to Smith the tuition, room, and board as it pertains to their financial aid package. And then on the student's behalf, Smith covers the tuition, room, and board expenses for the students to be abroad. And that applies to any study abroad destination, wherever the student's going, including the Geneva options. So they're out of pocket. The student would not be needing to pay out of pocket for those 3 items, tuition, room, and board. With that said, there are additional expenses related to study abroad. And I will put in the chat box a link to the cost and financing so that you can start planning on what those additional expenses are going to be. How much do you need to save up? When do you need that money, et cetera, et cetera.
And let me just add one important point for the BAMA. When you're in your 5th year, you're no longer at Smith. So you're no longer getting Smith. Unfortunately, you're no longer getting Smith financial aid. So what Lisa said applies to that your first semester of your senior year in Geneva when you start the BAMA program. But after you graduate from Smith, you can apply to the graduate school for financial aid and all that, but you're no longer a Smith student when you do your 5th year. And I talk more about that in the, if you watch the recording for the BMA session, we talk more about that. How competitive is the joint, this is from Claire, how competitive is the joint BAMA compared to the track ABC? I'll tell you from my experience, if your GPA is strong and you have good letters of rec, you will, and you have relevant courses, you're very likely to be accepted to the BAMA program. We recommend, the way the BAMA application works is you apply through the Office of International Study. We then look through the applications. We recommend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students to the Graduate Institute. At that point, you apply to the graduate student as if you're a regular graduate student. And our track record so far has been very good. Almost everybody we've recommended over the last 5 years has gotten admitted to the Graduate Institute. And those who haven't, to be honest, were predictable. You know, you need to take the GRE if you're going to go into international economics. Their GRE score was too low, or they had a background, that course background that wasn't relevant to what they wanted to study. Those are the couple of cases I could think of where students did not get admitted. But pretty much all of our students that we recommend have gotten admitted. And if we continue to have 4 or 5 applicants per year, and your GPA is strong enough, you're very likely to get recommended and then admitted. So there has not been a capacity problem for the BAMA the way there is for track B, for example. Sorry, track A. Track A, there's a limited number of students we could take because there's a limited number of internships. Now, we haven't gotten to the point where we had 10 or 15 applicants for the BAMA program. As I said, we've typically had 3 to 5. So it hasn't been an issue yet. If that helps. Still have a few more minutes. If there are other questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand or just speak out. Let me just reiterate one point which I made earlier, but I want to say again. You know, I'm a government professor, but Geneva can tell you, we get students from all disciplines, the humanities, the social sciences, even the sciences. They can essentially make progress toward your major in one of our tracks. So I want to emphasize that point. This is not a government program. It's really multidisciplinary.
Yes, we have a lot of guest students, for instance, from other universities and colleges, and these are typically attracted by the fact that you can study something in French. So you can study economics in French or chemistry and French. You can also study actually Arabic and mathematics if you prefer. But the fact that the non-gov topics are usually taught at the University of Geneva and taught in French, of course, requires that even for math and chemistry, you have a sufficient level of understanding. But that's also the fun, actually. It's to see another academic optic, in fact. For math, chemistry, and hard science, it can be a little bit challenging because we don't have the same system. It's more specialized at the University of Geneva. So we may have to confer before and correspond, because you shouldn't come with the obligation of finding a course. It's always a little bit under question. It depends on many factors, but the choice is huge, and we can discuss in advance. We do some advising in advance, of course. There is also a very good possibility of studying environmental studies at the master level. We have a special agreement with this department, and there is a good specialization in the Alps, alpine lakes, etc. So there are also some niche fields that are interesting.
Callie asked if there's any priority given to specific majors, and the answer is no, absolutely not. As I said, we accommodate major people from all disciplines. So
for Sanskrit, you need to go to Lausanne, though.
I mean, if it is true that a lot of government majors apply, but we get, you know, econ majors apply as well. We get a lot of them, but we get students from really the sciences, the humanities,
astronomy, even.
Yeah.
Theater. Gender studies is not bad neither. English department is very good.
Ironic, go to Geneva to study English.
But then you can be sent to London to study Shakespeare. I would do that.
There's also translation studies, right, Genevieve, which is also a concentration at Smith. So
this is something that does not work super well because at the bachelor level, they demand such a good level that it's doable if you're bilingual, more or less. But if you are normal students with a good knowledge of the second or third language, so often you struggle. But you can go into a course with translation from French to English, for example. But still, it's very demanding, and I'm not sure it's always. It's a little bit technical. It's not working very, very well, but we have good connection with them, and an alum is teaching there, so we can always find options. And then it counts for your concentration for sure.
Which reminds me, we also have a very active and pretty large alumni network in Geneva. These are
Mhm.
Smith alums, recent graduates and graduates from many, many years ago who really are devoted to Smith and our students, and they'll hold receptions with you. And, they're really quite nice how much they support the group.
And we even have PhD alumni. This is the new thing. I like that. So we have, I don't know, 5 or 6 students on the BMA or PhD or master level at the Grad Institute at the moment in Geneva. So we thought we would be without students, but we're not. We have lunch with them. No, it's true, and it's really fun.
So I guess if there are no other questions, we can wrap things up. It's 1 o'clock here in the East.
Maybe I should add something about internships, because it is a little
Sure.
bit the
Yeah,
highlight of the
idea.
program.
Yeah, good idea.
Internship is very interesting in Geneva because it really allows you to get into the heart of the international relations system, to work for NGOs, to see how things are organized there, to go to the UN or to conferences. It's also demanding because you constantly switch from studies to work, and these are completely different worlds, but it's also very rewarding because in between your research, the internship and the courses, you can combine something very specific, like, I don't know, migrants and water, or water governance and gender studies, etc. And you will find courses, researchers and experts at your internship that will help you build up something very specific. It's also good for your network, actually, because Geneva is small, much smaller, of course, than New York. And so that's why people say you can always meet people in Geneva, whereas in New York, it's complicated. People are stressed out. The city is too big. People are too busy. Geneva is very appreciated because at the heart of international relations, a lot of things are happening. So yeah, I think it's quite unique.
Okay, well, I guess we will stop here. If you have questions, feel free to email any of us, Genevieve Piron, Lisa Johnson, or me. And we hope to see your application soon, and we even more so see you in Switzerland before long.
Yes, we are waiting for you. We won't eat all the cheese before you arrive. Promise.
Or the chocolate.
Or the chocolate.